thank you too for organising some protests for me to attend. Anyone who'd like to join me, please, we'll leave as soon as the event is over. I'm a woman. I was together with another woman, founded WOZA, which is an Ndebele word which means come forward. Women of Zimbabwe, arise. We founded WOZA in 2002 because we felt that the discourse in Zimbabwe was very dominated by politicians, and it was mostly on how they should share their power and their positions and how they should manage to share resources. And we felt that there was too little focus on the everyday issues of ordinary people, how their children will be educated, how they'll feed their children, and all those very practical, basic things. And we also formed WOZA at a time when there was more and more laws being passed to stop our freedom of expression, our freedom of assembly, and our right to just simply hold a placard up saying the government of national unity is not doing enough for ordinary people. And we formed WOZA, and we said that we wanted to be able to set an example to Zimbabweans. Zimbabwe came about after a very violent liberation war, and we said we wanted to show a non-violent way in which ordinary citizens can hold their political leadership accountable and can pull the discourse back onto everyday issues. We also have constantly said, as we formed WOZA, that it isn't a revolution we are fighting. That's our Egyptian sister over there and the other African and people from the Arab Spring. We are fighting an evolution. The work that we are doing in WOZA is first and foremost to change the hearts and minds of the individual Zimbabweans, for them to understand what it is they want to see happening in their country, for them to understand and have their own framework of understanding democracy and the way in which their citizenship will be exercised. And so please don't misquote me and say we are fighting a revolution. It's all about an evolution, with the key 3 letters being E-B-E. The other issue is that it is a challenge, and I know we have other examples, and in our liberation war too, women fought alongside men to bring this new Zimbabwe, but immediately a new government comes into power or a new transition is in place, the woman must take the back seat yet again. And so this is a major challenge when these transitions come. And so we in WOZA are very conscious that this work we're doing, this brave, hard work, slogging, holding those placards and fighting for the space to speak out, must be a work and a space that we can transition and take and make it result in some more equality at all the different spaces and spheres in a citizen's participation. The challenge that we have is we are African women and we come from a very patriarchal Zimbabwe, and I'll tell you a little quick story. On the 10th of June, the police officers decided to raid a safe house that we had. And they raided this, and I'll explain in more detail, but it's much because of my colleagues in the Arab and African Spring that they decided to do that. But on the 10th of June, the police officers, known to us very well, from a distance we can already tell who that is, because of the ways that they've tortured our members, the many arrests that they've undergone, and the times they've denied us bail. I've been arrested 39 times. I know most of those police officers on site, and quite often by smell too. And we saw these guys at the gate, and one of our young activists said, I will go and speak to them. And she walked along, sort of skipping along. Her game was to pretend to be a very young little girl. And so she got to the gate and she said, yes, can I help you? And they said, open the gate, we're the police. She said, no, my mother said I mustn't open the gate. And she played for time. And so when she came back and she said, yes, definitely, it's the Law and Order Department of Laureate Central, and they're demanding to come in. We then made a strategic decision that we should exit over the back 6-foot-high Dura wall with an electric fence, because we were the top leadership and we knew when the police are there, we know what's going to happen. Some of us will be tortured, we'll be denied bail, and basically you participate in being a victim. You make yourself a victim. And that day we decided to make it over the back Jura wall. Now some of my friends, the leaders are traditionally built, and there were 30 of us that day, and we went over the Jura wall. As the police broke down the gates and they got in, they found one of our lodgers there, and they said to her, "We are the men who helped these women over the Jura wall fence." And that should just say it all to you, that women were not even capable of helping each other over the back Jura wall fence and live to fight another day. And that's the Zimbabwe under which we are trying to do this work that we're doing. You may hear that there's a government of national unity in Zimbabwe, but nothing has really changed. And this is why I'll agree with the previous speakers that is there any such thing as post-conflict, because we are still involved in a conflict. And we are still being threatened constantly with levels of violence. And it's so much so that part of the session this morning, I'm asking you all to start to interrogate what is violence, and in what forms does this violence take? Because in Zimbabwe we are beginning to see so many different forms of the violence, including the deindustrialization of Matabeleland, of Bulawayo, where I come from. It's a form of violence because it creates increased poverty and hunger and starvation. That's violence that we need to do something about. Now, I mentioned about the Arab Spring. You know, we have been working to mobilize a critical mass of protesters who understand nonviolent discipline, who can create critical mass of people on the street demanding change. And we were happily doing that work under hard repressive conditions. And in February, on February the 13th, as we hadn't really got to hear what was happening in Tunisia and Egypt, but we had the largest demonstration ever. And it was so big that the police just could watch. And that day we just did the demonstration and then we dispersed and we went home. And there was no increased repression. But immediately after that, news started to come through about the Arab Spring, and the twin of Robert Mugabe, Mubarak, had to flee and leave as soon as possible, and the message started to be delivered. So on the 1st of March, we already started to experience increased arrest, torture of our members, and on the 10th of June, we obviously had a raid, and most recently, once again, on the 21st of September, I was arrested with a colleague, denied bail. The whole agenda here is this deep worry that people, by going on the street, voting with their feet, and creating demand, and pushing their agenda, can bring change. And Robert Mugabe is afraid of that. But I think the other lesson that we should be learning, and I just want to mention this, is that it's not so much about one person, Robert Mugabe or Hosni Mubarak. It's about the systems that these dictators put in place. And if you are going to fight a revolution or an evolution, you've got to change the systems that they have in place. And if that system is a military system, you've got to make sure you cater for a changing of that system. I think I've mentioned most of the points. We'll but maybe just to mention some of my recommendations. Being arrested 39 times means that I'm also one of the main candidates and probably an expert on post-traumatic stress. Is that the word? I'm not sure I can even pronounce it right. But yes, I do have my nightmares. I do have my dreams. I look over my shoulder constantly. My life has been threatened more times this year than it has in the last 10 years. I was recently sent bullets. And it's not only my life, it's the life of the activists who I lead. And those issues, that mental trauma weighs heavily. And the Human Rights Defenders Fund and systems that are in place do not cater for people like me. They say, yes, we'll send you money, you can go on holiday to here or there. They don't cater for keeping me on the ground with some sort of sanity, lessening of my emotional baggage so I can keep fighting this good fight. That is a sad thing. They don't also cater for some form of counseling to help me along the way in my day-to-day existence. That's a sad thing too. They also don't cater for my personal safety and security. You know, to get help, to get a vehicle, because the current vehicle we have, every time we park it in town, there will be a sabotage of the brake lining system because the police know that vehicle. safe way to move around is near to impossible for me. To have help, to have a safe house is a great difficulty. And so I think I challenge my colleagues sitting next to me, and I challenge all of you that you have to come up with some systems to keep human rights defenders capable, physically, mentally, spiritually, to do the work that they have to do, which is not only work that they do for their countrymen and countrywomen, but for the greater international respect for human rights. The other issue, I think, is legal support. I am due to face a trial on the 12th of December, and I faced that trial knowing that a week before, the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights could inform me that they don't have funds to pay for the lawyer who is going to make sure that I don't get convicted of kidnapping and theft, stealing a $10 torch, which will discredit me in the eyes of the international community. It's a fabricated charge. But legal support is also absolutely vital, and we are sadly lacking in that. Then the other issue is, I think there has to be recognition that these revolutions are not fought over 18 days in Tahrir Square. They are months, years of building, understanding, recognition, helping people to overcome fear. And you do that by being completely committed to civic education, helping people to understand their rights and understand democracy. And I think the Zimbabwean example is one where they've just done a constitutional outreach process by just coming and asking people a list of 26 questions. No one came beforehand to explain what the word constitution means, or what systems of governments are, or how they have meaning. And that is where I feel the international community is betraying and letting individual citizens down, is they don't understand that we don't have access to the internet, we don't have access to all these books, and we need help to understand so that we can make our own